Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. You can find this in Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, in Paul's letter to his friends in Philippi. And he's writing to encourage them because they're facing fear and doubt and despair. They're facing living in a very hostile world towards Christianity. So Paul is encouraging them that even in spite of all that they're facing and all that they're going through, to rejoice. And for emphasis, he repeats himself. Rejoice. It would be the same way as if we're writing a letter to a friend and we take and we bold it in a big font, something that really stands out. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Now, to rejoice is to be glad, to be delighted, to be exceedingly joyful. Now, that very root of that word rejoice is joy. To be glad, to be happy, to be delighted. Now, we know that as a Christian, our joy is different than happiness. Happiness comes as a consideration to our circumstances. If somebody hands me $1 million, I'm happy. If somebody robs my bank account of $1 million, I'm sad. That my happiness would be based on my circumstances. But our joy is not to be based on our circumstances. Our happiness, our delight is to be based on our God. I mean, think about it. Think about what God has done for you. God has saved you. He's changed you. He's accepted you as His very own. He's preparing a place for you. And while He's preparing a place for you, He's going to come back to get you, to take you to be with Him forever. But even in the midst of that, He promises to be with us always. And not only is He with us, but He's in us. I mean, it's an amazing thing. I'm the temple of the Holy Spirit. I'm God's dwelling place. So I'm happy, I'm delighted, I'm glad, not because of what's going on around me, but because of who I am in God and because of what God is doing. So Paul's encouraging his friends, and I think if Paul were to write a letter in 2020 to us as a nation and to us as Christ followers, as we're facing everything that we're facing with all the quarantines due to the coronavirus pandemic around the world, I think he would write the same thing. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. Rejoice. Be glad. Be delighted. How often? All the time. Not because things are difficult, not because when things are going great you rejoice, but because things are difficult you get pouty and whiny and depressed. No. Rejoice in the Lord always. And notice he has that in there. Rejoice in the Lord. I rejoice because of who God is. I rejoice because of what God is doing and has done. Or I simply rejoice because God is God. So I encourage you today, rejoice in the Lord. Take a moment to write down some of the different things that bring you joy, that bring you gladness. Think about the things that God has done and is doing in your heart and life and in the lives around you, and write some of those things down. Then take a moment to share those things with somebody else. This is what God has done. This is what God is doing. Or maybe take a moment to write a praise song or a poem or just a God thought in a journal, but record something that causes your heart and your mind not to get caught up in your circumstances, but causes your heart and mind to delight in who God is and who you are in God. And allow that joy just to build up, so that it influences others, so that they see, wow, there's something different about you. I want that joy that you have. Take a moment today to rejoice in who God is. Take a moment today to celebrate God, to worship Him, to exalt Him, to praise His name. I love you. Have a great day. And remember, you matter to God.